We'll bring us back to order and start the next committee. The next committee for the Bellingham City Council is Community and Economic Development, and the chair for that committee is Councilmember Pinky Vargas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everybody. I am joined on committee by Council Members Roxanne Murphy and April Barker. We have two presentations today and a topic of discussion. Our first presentation is going to be a report on the recent activities of the Port of Bellingham as Whatcom County's Associate Development Organization, often referred to as the ADO. And we have a special guest today. We have a presentation from Dodd Snodgrass from the Port of Bellingham. So I'll turn it over to you, Dodd.
Thank you, Chair Vargas, members of the committee, and members of the City Council. And I'm here today to give a review of some 2016 activities by the Port in the realm of our Associate Development Organization responsibilities. So the ADO, just to remind you, this is a designation made by counties across the state of Washington as the lead agency for economic development, primarily with respect to relationship with the Department of Commerce. There are 34 ADOs in the state. Many of them reside with EDCs, Economic Development Councils, but 4 are with port districts. So there are different forms of the ADO relationship, and it's a biennial contract with the Commerce. And there's a scope of work. My colleague John Michener is our primary manager of that contract with the state. Regarding business retention expansion, this is a key area of involvement of what we do because job creation, economic growth is primarily created by the businesses we have in our community. We spend time basically pounding the pavement and visiting companies. We saw 41 last year, and we kind of cold call and we drop in and visit and see what they do and find out what the issues are. On top of that, the state has sector leads that were as a program created by Governor Inslee, work for the Commerce Department. We hosted those sector leads up here in the county, so they're familiar with the industries we have in the county and generate some relationships if some needs should arise. So they're kind of an advocacy point with the Governor's office and also with Commerce. And as well, it brings the responsibilities of the ADO. We work very closely with the various service providers across the county, some of our partners, but primarily the realtors, banking professionals, border policy, lawyers, and immigration attorneys, things like that we need to bring in for assistance on projects. Impact Washington is a nonprofit in the state, and we've developed a really good relationship with them as far as lean training with some companies, and I'll mention a program we've launched in a little bit in that area. Another area with business retention expansion, we have a number of organizations in the county that serve businesses and workforce and business development, and we've formed the Team Whatcom group, and we meet monthly so we can stay in touch with the different service providers in workforce development and business and economic development. So here's some things that we're excited about that were accomplished last year. High-Tech Energy, you're all familiar, that's our solar panel manufacturer here in the county. They were getting courted heavily to leave the county, and they wanted to stay here, and we worked with them to find a proper facility, and it so happened we had the facility down at 800 Cornwall, and the city was very supportive in assisting in that project, and so we sold the building, and they're going to make that investment, and further we landed a Work Start training grant to work with Impact Washington and iTech so they can train their existing workforce and expand another 30 jobs. So that's pretty exciting. We've never landed a grant like that before for workforce training.
I'm sorry, Dodd, what was that called?
Work Start. It's actually, Work Start program. It's the Strategic Reserve Account. Technically, it's a program with the Commerce Department that the governor has final say. It's used to close deals, essentially. All-American Marine, you're all familiar with the building that's going up on the waterfront, and we're very excited about what All-American is doing. They just landed in a contract, if you saw, for a hybrid ferry for, I think, San Francisco Port. It's really exciting stuff. They pay well for their positions. They're going to be expanding, and I'm told the facility should be completed in the springtime so they can get busy. American Netting Fabrics, we want to point to this project because the port has a revolving loan fund. It used to be with the EDC, and John Michener manages that program. It's a small gap financing lending program. And American Exit Fabric is a company that he provided a loan to, I don't recall how long ago, but essentially it helped grow the company, and they were able to start a new, construct a new facility out north of Ferndale. And Alco, I can't say I'm responsible for saving all those jobs, but we were involved with a workforce committee and heavily involved in making sure that we could keep the smelter operating. So, okay, here's American Nettings and Fabrics' new building. This is up at the Delta Tech Park, which is north of Ferndale. So these are some things we're keeping we can't necessarily know everything that's going on in the local economy. A lot of business activities are clearly all being made by private decisions, but we know of about 25 or so companies that are saying they want to grow, they want to expand. They want to expand here. We want to keep them here. So we keep on top of these prospects, and those are a few of the sectors and companies that we've been in conversation with that they're looking at growth. The Preferred Freezer project, that's in Linden. That's a project we have some responsibility for. It was looking at another site in Whatcom County last year, and it sort of fell through timing-wise, and it was going to basically go back up to Canada, where they were going to construct a cold storage facility, and we directed it to Linden, and they constructed a 315,000 square foot facility, and they're going to do an expansion. So that's good to know. So recruitment, over 2016, there were 34 leads that we worked with, and those are basically identified by different sources where the leads came from. Again, commerce is a key source of leads where a site selector or another contact will come to the Commerce Department and say, we have a business that's looking for a siting in the state of Washington. Sometimes they go across the state just to everybody. Sometimes they say, we want to be in Southwest Washington or Northwest Washington. And we respond to all those. We make them available to the real estate community, to city people. Terra gets those leads also. And sometimes they're very focused. And I'm pleased to announce that we have excellent relationship with the Department of Commerce. We're very responsive to leads, and so we get their attention on as much as we can. The other exciting thing is John set up a desk at the Surrey Board of Trade. That's their version of a Chamber of Commerce in Surrey. So he'll be up there on a regular basis to meet with companies. So catering those relationships with Canadian organizations and businesses is a priority of ours, and we're working on that. Okay, so if you saw Saturday's Herald, you might have seen a story about Naak Foods. It's an Indian paneer cheese manufacturer. There are a number of products actually, but they wanted to set up a cheese manufacturing plant, and it's a pretty big company in BC. This is the owner of the company I met maybe 5 years ago. So that's a relationship that goes over a period of time, and they wanted a space for their facility, and the former Sargento's space at cold storage was ideal for them, and so they've been working on that relationship, and so they signed the lease just the other day, and so we're looking forward to that investment in the city of Bellingham, and it's good for cold storage. It diversifies what they're doing, and I love Indian food, so I'm glad to see it here, and I think hopefully food manufacturing, food processing is a very important part of the local economy, so we can point to that and attract some other similar kinds of companies. And there's some other areas, I'm not going to mention any names, but Bike Component Company, there's one that's been looking around town that we're in touch with, plastics company looking for a head office. Getting into 2017, actually it's been kind of busy. We have a company that's looking for potential expansion of their injection molding operation. They're another location in the state. I've got a wood manufacturer that was looking at Sumas this year. We've got a machine manufacturer also in BC that's pretty serious about Whatcom County, and we have another one in the marine area that we just came to our attention. And we respond to these. We look for what the companies where they want to go. I think it's important we all think about, Whatcom County is a business in Ferndale, benefits folks in Bellingham who work there, and a business in Bellingham. And I don't think we're that competitive locally. If we think that way, it doesn't help. And we can't be competitive with Skagit for that matter. We have to think globally. And so one of these leads, they're looking specifically in the area. I'd like to see that we could come together regionally and say this would be a great project. The Choose Whatcom site, I think you're familiar with this, and this was a collaborative effort. The city funded this, the port, and Whatcom County. The idea was to create a central place, kind of a clearinghouse where you could go in, you want information, and you could go to the different organizations that touch businesses in different ways. So marketing, these are some of the areas. We're pretty prudent about what we're doing in marketing. We have some rack cards we've done. We get to trade shows. We mostly walk regional trade shows in the Seattle area or in BC. They're lower cost. Typically they're in the aerospace or manufacturing area. The rack cards, I mentioned that. Seattle strategy, reaching, this is on top of a lot of people's minds as they see what's going on in Seattle with the growth and congestion. What does that mean for some businesses down there? And think more about other locations for expansion. So there's discussions in the community and different organizations in different areas about looking at that. So we're part of that dialogue. And there's some work among Team Whatcom in a subcommittee to look at more outreach activities. So here's an example of some of the trade shows that we've been to. Recreation Northwest Summit and Expo, they just held it this year. A couple of you were down there. Its first year was last year. And we're excited about that. We're excited about what Recreation Northwest is doing as far as organizing and building this brand of recreation, because it makes sense. We all know this. Outside Magazine says we're, top outdoors community. And so people know to come here and to recreate and go outside. But we want more companies making stuff or designing stuff or selling stuff here as well. So we've got 3 high-end bike manufacturers. One of the bike assemblers relocated from Utah to come here because they wanted to bike. So I don't personally mountain bike, but I love what they're doing, and I think we all need to embrace that and work with people that understand the industry. And there are a lot of folks that are at the summit and at the expo that get that. So we want to keep looking at that area. Globe 2016, that's a biennial thing in clean technology. Again, with iTech, the expansion there with solar assemblers in the county. Clean tech, biogas, we've got some biogas out in the county. It's a burgeoning area that clearly makes a lot of sense for our economy and our values here in Whatcom County. So other shows, some of these trade shows, it costs a little bit to go to these shows. We're looking at them kind of strategically and figure out where it makes sense. And you've got to know when you're going to a show, usually you get your leads set up. You want to meet with some companies that are showing that might be thinking about other locations. And we looked at, the Port of Seattle is a little more aggressive about this, and we've looked at some ideas about working with them. Reaching out to site selectors. So site selectors, those professionals, a lot of them are concentrated in Texas and Georgia, and their job is to site companies. And that's one strategy, to make more relationships with folks that want to know that we're ready for business and we want business here. So that's there's our panel. We have these at the airport. We built these ourselves, printed them out. So just an example of a way we can get some messaging to travelers as they're coming through the airport. And digital media, thinking about different ways we can do ad placement, things like that to get some attention. So a list of low collaboration. A large part of what we do is relationship building. My philosophy is we can't always solve problems ourselves. We're not going to do it. It's a team sport. Economic development's a team sport. So we have a lot of people in the community that can help and do different things. And so a lot of the folks around the table at Team Whatcom are those great partners that do a lot on their own. And together, we get out and we speak to local chambers. We sponsor local organizations and events. So I mentioned Recreation Northwest. We just sponsored the farm to table program, Sustainable Connections. TAG does a few events, and we support those with our space and also with funding commitment. We just hosted a procurement program with the SBDC. And the SBDC, by the way, Small Business Development Center, the city and the port and the county all invest in our Small Business Development Center. We have one of the largest centers in the state because we think it's a valuable service and business counseling that they provide. John serves on the board of the Lummi Community Development Finance Institute. And I mentioned the Clean Tech Alliance event. And we work closely with our workforce partners, like the Workforce Council and the colleges and the programs they provide. So our Technology Development Center, for those of you who've been around a while, we built this down in the corner of the warehouse, the F Street warehouse, probably in 2008. And Western is down there, and BTC. It moved kind of slowly in the early years. We had a hybrid bus project, a few things. Programmatically, it wasn't all set up. Over the last 4 years, thanks to some leadership at the university and the college, some funding resources, and some other commitments, there's a lot of things going on down there right now. There was an event the other day, Council Member Vargas was there, the mayor was down there, because we have the composites program that Bellingham Technical College launched, I think, a year ago. So it's composites engineering, and it's things for the aerospace profession, for recreation equipment. They're down there building snowboards and skis. Transportation, a lot of applications. So I think they started out with 12 students. They're going to be up to 52 students in that program down in our Technology Development Center. And they use that whole area. Originally, it was Western on one side, BTC on the other. They are collaborating in this whole space. It's a pretty unique working relationship between a 4-year university and a 2-year technical college. In addition, the Foundry Makerspace, you're familiar with the Foundry. Mary has moved that down there, and she'll be setting up her programs. And the Idea Institute out of Western, they hosted the event the other day. They're all down there, and it's created a big work lab. So we're really excited. And thanks, the city of Bellingham was importantly involved when we created the TDC because there was some funding, federal funding that went through the city to help make that happen. So we really appreciate that. And we want to see good things happen as far as launching, new industry, assisting local industry and other industries to grow and become successful in Bellingham-Whatcom County. That's our updated list of 100 things made in Whatcom County. It's on our website. We figure this stuff out when we go out and talk to companies. If you're wondering, that there's 12 craft brewers in the county now in Bellingham. I didn't list beer 12 times, but but just about everything else is included in there. And so we really need to embrace the fact that we have a pretty diverse and vibrant economy here in the county. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thanks, Todd. That was awesome. And yeah, the Idea Labs kickoff party at the TDC was amazing to see all that energy and all those people down there. I'm really excited about that process. I know we don't have a lot of time, but Todd, maybe you could give an example of what it's like. Let's say a company calls me and says, hey, I'm interested in coming to Bellingham. Can you tell us what anyone from the council or staff should be doing and the little process that you go through?
So if you get a phone call?
Yeah, so I get a phone call and says, hey, I'm interested in bringing my business to Bellingham. Tell us what we should do.
Refer them to John or myself.
And what's the process they go
through? So our
through?
process then, we talk to the company, find out what their parameters are, timeline. Are they going to come visit, and is there any preliminary work we could do as far as ground level kind of? Typically, it's a facility. It's one of the questions they might need. We can figure out pretty quick if they're not ready, say they're just getting started out or getting launched or early in stage, we'd send them to the SBDC. So we'd basically vet that and then work through the process and then get back to them, if we haven't heard in a while. And we also are kind of strategic about the kind of, it isn't like wouldn't say no to every company, but it's I want to set up a retail shop. We might send them directly to the SBDC. Kind of depends on the level scale the business might be bringing to the table, but we make sure that everybody gets dealt with in a good, appropriately, and then either we handle it or refer it somewhere.
So to you and John, there's not like an overarching depository that we say send to this, like not to send to Choose Whatcom, but directly to you or John.
Yeah, it's ideally get it in someone's hands, so that works out best.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions from the committee? No? Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, Dodd. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, our next item is an update on the Intern Low Barrier Homeless Shelter and Day Center we have a new program that is offered by the Lighthouse Mission Ministries. And with that, I want to send a big, huge thank you to the Lighthouse Mission, to the Fountain Community Church, and the Red Cross for providing this needed service. They stepped up for the city and the county. So I'm going to turn it over to Terrace Sundin, our Community and Economic Development Manager.
Sarah,
And
new name.
want to try something new?
I was named Sarah for the first 3 days of my life, actually.
Thank you, Tara.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little background because I don't think this story has gotten out there, and I want you guys to be aware of it. As you know, the city's been working closely with the Lighthouse Mission for about a year, maybe a year and a half. They're located in Old Town, and they've stepped up to assist the city in addressing some of our immediate needs regarding homeless individuals and people living on our streets and in our parks and in cars, etc. As we're looking for a site to have this homeless shelter facility, the Lighthouse Mission recognized that they couldn't sit by for another year, and immediately stepped up and turned their drop-in center that was open just during the day, a handful of hours, into a 24/7 facility. And they did that this last October, and they turned that around pretty quickly. I think the decision to do it was done in August, and by October they were open. And we really appreciate that they stepped up and did that. They did not ask the city of Bellingham for any financial contribution. The mayor and I attended an event this last weekend where they were raising funds to operate this facility. So this interim solution, it's located in a building that's not suitable long term, but it's certainly doing okay for right now. It costs them an additional $200,000 a year to operate this facility, of which they're taking on. So we check in with them about weekly, and in November we saw the numbers reaching capacity at their facility. So what they've done is they've taken the drop-in center and turned that into a low barrier shelter for men, and it houses up to 80 people. And then they've taken their chapel that's in the main mission building, and the chapel they're turning into a shelter for women, and that can shelter up to 40 people. And they were seeing those numbers reach a point that it was filling up, and our staff got a little concerned about what happens when the coldest shelter or time of our year hits. And so we kind of had a little regroup internally, and Katie Franks, she reached out to Rick Qualls, and I don't know if you know Rick, but he's worked with us. We were introduced to him when we were planning in the Fountain District, and then he's also stepped up for the Samish Way neighborhood, and she called upon him and said, what do you think about helping out? We think that when the winter hits, we're going to be turning, the Lighthouse Mission will be turning people away. And he and his congregation stepped up, and they've been on the coldest nights of the year. That's when the Lighthouse Mission will call Fountain Community Church, and they'll open their doors. They trained up, they open their doors, and all the women move over to Fountain Community Church. And that's fully being operated by volunteers and through Fountain Community Church. Also, Katie reached out to the Red Cross, and they did and donated all of the bedding for Fountain Community Church. So yes, we want to thank all of them, and I wanted you guys to know that was happening and to get that message out there. We're hoping to, in the near future, hopefully in the next few weeks, be able to make some announcements about a more permanent solution. But in the interim, we are very appreciative of what the Lighthouse Mission, Red Cross, and the Fountain Community Church have done for our community.
Councilmember Murphy.
I'm just wondering if there's anything that we as council members or me as an individual could do to help. For example, are there any special donations that these organizations might benefit from that we could do outreach about to the community? Or do they need more volunteers? Could we get the word out about that? Just any way we might be able to help.
I'll check on volunteers, but having just been from a fundraiser, they are in need of money. Money to buy, pay for staff, but money to buy toiletries, money to buy counseling services, et cetera. So they are fundraising right now just to, so this is $200,000 on top of what they already have to do on an annual basis to run their other programs. I also would love to invite you guys down, and I could arrange a time to go down there and learn more about how they operate during the day and in the evening. I know our police department, David Dahl just did, and some of their staff, and they're changing things. They've changed a lot in the last few months, and they're working so collaboratively also with our other homeless service providers, and so it's pretty amazing. So I'd love to invite you guys over, and I can help make that happen too.
Thank you.
Do you have anything, Gabriel? Okay. Councilmember Hamel and then Lilliquist.
I just wanted to thank the Lighthouse Mission for stepping up to do this, as well as the Fountain Community Church and our local Mount Baker chapter of the American Red Cross. The uptick in unsheltered homelessness has happened over the last couple of years, so we're seeing this in our community. However, it's not unique to Bellingham. Communities up and down the I-5 corridor are experiencing that as well. So I did want to thank those partners for stepping up. I did have a question as relates to the impacts for some of the neighbors around the day use facility that was converted to an overnight facility. If there's just been any outreach or how do we mitigate any impacts that there might be?
The Lighthouse Mission has been doing quite a bit of outreach, and so they have the neighbors at least adjacent to the drop-in center. So the drop-in center, by the way, is located on Holly across from the gas station. And so they're in pretty regular contact with the neighbors. One of our goals, staff's goals, is to find a permanent location that's not in a residential neighborhood. There does tend to be some conflicts with that, but they've been very responsive. I know too, there's a business across the street and to the neighbors.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lilliquist.
Thank you, Pinky. So you mentioned that before the mission had quarters for both men and women, but when they expand, the women have to go to another place. So my question has to do with have there been sort of a needs assessment of how many, how great the need is for beds for men, beds for women, beds for women with children, beds for families, because one of the issues is, not all people are appropriately put in the same dormitory. Is there any particular gap? I know that Northwest Youth Services has stepped up, and they have some limited shelter also for at-risk and homeless youth and young adults. That's kind of a special population, uniquely vulnerable. What is the assessment on kind of like where the need is greatest right now? Or they're kind of like if we're meeting all the need equally, or is there a weak spot?
I wish I could answer that off the top of my head. I would have to get that information for you. Katie Franks has been helping us get that data. There is a point-in-time count that talks about those that are without, that addresses those that are without housing. What we do know is we don't have enough services, period, for any of those populations. But what we really don't have is we don't have up until this point a low barrier. That means that we're going to drop the bar a little bit, means that people may have been drinking during the day, as one example. So long as their behavior is such that they're safe for other people, then they can stay there. That is one thing that we didn't have at all in our community until this point. Because the Lighthouse Mission actually, I've learned a lot. I think there's I think we all need to learn a little more about what they're doing, because I thought they were operating that kind of emergency shelter, and really they're offering more transitional housing programs for women and children and for men, but in a transitional setting. But we're trying to get a handle on those numbers.
Yeah, I think that's important, because if we're contemplating a long-term solution, we want to set the proportions for that long-term solution. Yeah, as you say, I think the Agape House run by the Mission was opened like 2 or 3 years ago, which is a women-focused shelter because they were needing to separate sometimes.
And I do want to mention, I'm talking about a low barrier shelter, just providing you an update and really an opportunity to thank those that have stepped up in just this arena. But the city is very committed to finding different long-term solutions. So this might be one solution, but we are funding, and what will soon be under construction, of permanent housing for Northwest Youth Services, 20 units for them, and then another 20 units of homeless housing on State Street. You know, we've participated in Francis. We're participating in Eleanor. Apartments that's going up. So we're investing in long-term solutions as well.
Councilmembers Barker and then Murphy.
So I do want to commend you on your, you're using first person speak, which is really difficult. We used to talk about populations like, oh, the homeless people, that homeless person, and I think what we've learned is our language is really important. So I think several times you've used the first person speak in talking about people who are struggling with homelessness versus a homeless person. And that's hard to do. I'm working on it myself. It's like when we talk about impoverished children, it's children who are living in poverty. It's when we attach those labels, we can actually have more impact on people than we realize. So just wanted to recognize that, because I've been struggling with it for a year, and it's been pointed out to me several times when I haven't used it. So thank you for being sensitive to that.
Councilmember Murphy.
When I first moved to Bellingham, I lived on G Street, 1 block away from the Lighthouse Mission. And so one of the things that I really appreciated was anytime I had neighborhood issues, the Lighthouse Mission was always right there and so responsive and would take care of it immediately. For example, people would start to sleep in their cars on our street. And so anytime that would be reported, it was handled so carefully, so considerately. I also wanted to say that another group that really handled all such circumstances very well was the Bellingham Police Department. And I saw such respectful and courteous ways of dealing with these various issues, supporting the neighborhood, but also supporting the work of the mission. So I think we're in good hands anytime we're dealing with this.
Tara, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. And yeah, we are doing a lot of things for long-term transitional housing, but immediate solutions for our unsheltered community was a huge challenge for us to work through. So again, thank you, Lighthouse Mission, and to the Fountain Community Church for reaching out and helping us get through that. Thank you very much for that presentation.